See if that's working. Let's go to World Ecamm. Oh, and there we are. And okay, right. Let's get Mr. Okay. Right. I think we're back in business, Mark.
Okay.
Having a few sound issues then. Okay, everybody, it's 2 o'clock. That's perfectly timed. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. My name is Joel Hughes, and I run Glass Mountains, which is a WordPress specialist agency based in the UK with lots of clients in the UK and the US, like Mark. So the event today is part of the webinar series we've on various WordPress and website-related topics. Next week, I'll be talking about WordPress and content, and we've got some more events coming up where we've got experts from the field of SEO and copywriting. So please hang around to the end to hear about how you find out about more details about that. But next, let's move on to our esteemed guest. Yeah, I can see the comments. I'm not quite sure how I managed to turn off sound then, but I'm glad I saw the comments flood in. Otherwise, that would have been an interesting episode of people lip reading us. So yeah, Mark,
might be my best content ever.
the golden content. We might have invented a new format, Mark. It's actually no audio.
Instead of creating a meme, we've created a mime.
We've gone from meme to mime.
Yeah.
Mark is a globally recognized keynote speaker, educator, business consultant, and author. Many books. His blog Grow, and of course we're talking about blogging today, is hailed as one of the top marketing blogs in the world. So we've got the right person on the call today to discuss your blogging questions. Now, Mark had some big news this week. He's now a chief operating officer of B Squared. which he runs with Brooke Sellers, and Brooke co-hosts your Marketing Companion podcast, doesn't she, Mark?
Yeah, that's right. And Brooke has been a friend and collaborator of mine for really 5 or 6 years now, and she's built an amazing business. And as you know, I mean, anybody in this field knows that it's so hard to get outsourced social media support, digital advertising support, online customer care, because a lot of the people that you find just don't really care about you. They give you these cookie cutter solutions. Now, I'm lucky to have found you because, and I've worked with Glass Mountain since 2015. And I mean, Joel is in that same category. Glass Mountains, they care about you. They pay attention to you. So that's the kind of people I like to work with. Joel's team, even they'll like look at things on my site and they'll say, should we do this? They're actually proactive. And Brooke has done the same sort of thing, Joel, with outsourced social media, digital advertising, and she's helping her customers reach these amazing new levels. And so it's like, wow, she has cracked the code. And I mean, she's really reinvented outsourced services. I feel that strongly about it. So I'm excited to be part of B Squared now.
Okay. Oh, well, that's fantastic. It's good to see a new venture getting off the ground in the current conditions and all that stuff. Right, so we've been looking at your blog, of course, Mark, and obviously me and the guys with some back-end access to your website, we were able to pull out a few stats. So I thought I'd talk about some of those stats first just to get the conversation going. Now, on your site, you've obviously been blogging since about 2009, Mark, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Right, well, so how many words do you think you've added on that blog in that time?
Oh, my gosh. I literally have no idea. It's got to be over 1 million.
It is over 1 million. Did you have a game show in the States called Play Your Cards Right? Higher and low? Oh. Right, okay, so the actual count is just under 2.5 million words.
Wow. Okay.
And just to show me up, the guys in the team run the same stats on my blog, and I've got to about 80,000 words, so I've got a long, long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
You average about 12 to 17 posts a month. Now, a few years ago, you were actually doing slightly more than that, so it feels like now you've hit your groove more into that's what your level is, really.
Well, I think there's actually an important lesson there because and by the way, I'm so excited to talk about blogging today. It's been a long time since I've been interviewed about blogging or even have written about blogging. And obviously, this is my social media drug of choice. I mean, I love to write. I love to blog. 2.5 million words worth. And the important lesson there, Joel, around consistency is, I'm sure we'll be talking more about that today in terms of how much should you publish and consistency. But when people unsubscribed to me in that period where I was blogging more, then the number one reason that they unsubscribed was too many updates.
Okay.
And so I backed it off. I think I was doing maybe 4 posts a week. I backed it off to 3 posts a week, and my unsubscribes decreased by 80%. So, for my audience, yeah, you're right. I sort of hit that sweet spot, sort of hit that groove. Occasionally, I might publish an extra post if there's something extraordinary going on in the world, or it's just something I need to get out. But I try to stick to that 3 times a month, because as soon as I cross that line, I start to get unsubscribes.
The other stat which the guys found was that you have got more verbose over time. Sort of as time has gone on, you've invested more time maybe into the actual length of the post. Whether that was a strategic thing or it's just something you just sort of it felt natural for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was really strategic, but I mean, my blog certainly has evolved a lot. It's changed a lot as I've grown and changed as a person.
Yeah.
And one of the ways the blog has started to serve me in a different way over the years is that the blog becomes sort of a research and development center for my books.
Okay.
So I'll create blog posts that are maybe like take new ideas in different directions, or I'll have an idea that I want to include in a book, and I'll test it on the blog first to see what people think. Did I miss something? Did I get it right? And this has been so helpful, Joel, that I've actually taken blog comments from readers of my blog and used that in my book.
Wow. Okay.
Because they've made such amazing contributions, that just new ideas like, wow, I didn't think about it that way. That really is important enough that I need to include that as a comment in the book with, their attribution, of course. So that's probably one of the reasons why my my blogs tend to be a little bit longer. Of course, during this lock-in period, they've probably been a little bit longer because I've had more time.
Yeah.
I've had some more time to write, think, research a little bit more. And I know some of that energy and some of that time has gone into the blog.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Now, let's move on to the first question then, which was, what is your process for writing blog posts, Mark? Do you capture lots of ideas on the go, or do you just kind of sit there and you blast it out?
Well, and by the way, Joel sent me some of the questions ahead of time, and boy, we got some great questions today. So
some great ones, isn't there?
Really great questions, and I'm going to use some of this content actually, in in a blog post. But so the question is about my process, and I get this question a lot. I mean, a lot of people just sort of wonder, how can you keep creating so many great ideas? And I think that I'm not necessarily more gifted than anybody else, but I might be more disciplined than other people. So this is what I mean. I think to create consistently great content, it's a matter of discipline. So, and there's three main disciplines. Number one, you have to sort of assess your day and your environment in terms of, could this be a story for my blog? Is there an idea here?
Yeah.
So we're constantly bombarded by ideas. I mean, even in this broadcast, Joel, people might be inspired with ideas. It might be something that you hear in the news. It might be something that you read. It could be just the cover of a magazine in a store or something like that. You just have to think, is there something there that makes me curious? Is there something there that would be relevant to my audience that I could write about? So that's number one. You just sort of have to have this mindset of always being aware of your environment and thinking in terms of, could this be a story? Secondly, you have to have the discipline to write it down. Write down those ideas right away. Just a headline. Doesn't have to be anything more than that. Write it on your smartphone. Write it on in a journal. I go into WordPress and I just write the headline, just the idea as a headline, and that's all. All right. And I've found when I don't do that, that's when I falter. I lose the ideas, because now we get into discipline number three, and you'll see why this is important. Discipline number three, if creating content is important to you, and it should be, and if it's a priority, you need to prioritize this and schedule it just like you would schedule a meeting or going to the gym or having a date or something like that. So I kind of block out time every week, and it's at least, it's probably 2 hours. In 2 hours, I can do 2 really good posts, or work on pieces of a post. But for me, it's Sunday morning. I get up early, maybe 6 a.m., 7 a.m., put on a pot of coffee, no distractions. The house is quiet, and I get my blog ready for the week. And the beauty is I've got these ideas to choose from that I've selected all week. I actually have a backlog of 265 ideas that I've never even written about, because I keep collecting ideas. But it's kind of fun because these things inspire you all week. I write them down, and then on Sunday morning I just think, what's going to be the most fun
Yeah.
to write about this week? And so you don't have to face a blank screen or a blank piece of paper. You've got this whole list of ideas to choose from. And that's really the discipline it takes to be a consistent blogger. And any time in my life I haven't adhered to that discipline, that's when I've faltered.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've got the next 2.5 million words already lined up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how relevant those ideas or how good those ideas are anymore, but they're there.
Okay, well, I snuck that question in early. So the real number one question is from John Pollinger. And John asks, what is the best way to stand out from the zillions of other bloggers out there? Now, I don't know if he's done this technical measurement of zillions, but I think, there's more people producing content nowadays than ever. What's your thoughts there, Mark?
Well, that is an important question. And I appreciate John for posing that. In many ways, whether you're creating content or you're in marketing, it's the question. How do you stand out amid all this noise? And my view is that you really only have one choice, and that's to have the courage to add your own voice and your own story, your own personality to your content. To stand out, you have to be original. And to be original, you really have no choice. You've got to include a little piece of you in your content. There's only one you. There's no one like you. You have no competition. No one has your stories, your perspective, your heritage. And so that was a turning point for me as I learned that lesson in my early days of blogging. When I started out, Joe, I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I was floundering. And I had come from the corporate world, so I was really buttoned up with my content and very formal with my content. And, I had this idea that I had to show everybody how smart I was, and I had to create this very targeted content for this targeted audience of these personas that I made up. And in those early days, two things happened. Number one, nothing happened. Nobody cared about my content, and nobody read it, nobody commented, nobody shared it. And then the second thing that happened is I started to get bored just writing this like very uptight content to like these personas that I made up in my head. So about 9 or 10 months in, I started to relax. And if I just felt funny, I was kind of funny. If I was upset about something, I just said, I just don't understand this. Why does the marketing world have to be this way? And I learned an important lesson. Sometimes you don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to show how smart you are. Just asking the right questions can be the best blog post. And then what happened is once I relaxed and started adding my own personality, which made this original, which made it stand out. Instead of me finding my target audience found me. So, my voice started to be heard and shared, not just in this little area of America where I live, but all around the world. And I found hundreds and then thousands of people who say, I believe in this guy. I like the way he thinks and I like the way he writes. And that never would have happened if I just had stayed in, this kind of very conservative corporate-like channel and didn't start adding my own opinion and my own personality. That makes all the difference in the world. That makes all the difference in the world for every content creator. That's what makes it stand out.
So it took you about 9 months to find that voice. So there must have been a lot of perseverance to get to that stage. I wonder if that's a long time or a short time. Maybe it depends on the personality.
Well, I think the nice thing today is that there's a lot of guidance out there. I've written books on blogging. I wrote the content code. I wrote Known, which is a process of how to create your personal brand. And I stumbled around. Yeah, there we go. I fumbled around. I stumbled around. We didn't have that guidance back then. in 2009, 2010. Everybody was, plowing new ground, trying to understand what this world of social media is like. But I think today we have a much better understanding and even, research on how this works. Well, I try to incorporate research and data and academic studies in my writing, because when I take an approach, I don't want it to just be Mark Schaefer's opinion. I want to, connect the dots of how this really works in the real world. So I think it's a lot easier to have fast success today than, back in 2009, 2010.
Well, that's good to hear, I'm sure, for the audience. So the next question we've got is from Holly Payne. And Holly asks, how regularly should it be expected, I suppose, to blog? Is it better to post regularly and short, or wait longer periods of time for better content?
Well, here is the answer to every single question in marketing. Everyone. It depends. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, if you're trying to create a consistent pattern of content production, just as a rule of thumb, I would shoot at least to start for once a week.
Okay.
Now, again, it depends. All right. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So the most important word in marketing, or really content production, is this word maneuver. It's not content, it's not blogging, it's not videos. You have to figure out in your business niche, in your industry, how can you position yourself so you're a little bit different than everybody else.
Okay.
We already talked about this idea of adding your personality and your voice, okay? But what about frequency? So let me give you two examples. There's a fella, an executive with Google named Avinash Kaushik. He only blogs about once every other month. But when he blogs, it's like 10,000 words. It's like this, it's almost like a mini book, all right? So he doesn't blog very often, but when he blogs, he creates this piece of content that's epic.
Yeah.
All right? And he's got enough content to be blogging easily once a week in all that time frame. But so the way he's maneuvered is, he's less consistent, but he's more on the quality side.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at another extreme example. John Lee Dumas. John Lee Dumas is a famous podcaster, and he created this show called Entrepreneur on Fire. And the reason he created it was because he was frustrated. He wanted to learn how to be an entrepreneur, and he wanted an episode about how to be an entrepreneur every single day. There was no podcast like that. So he created a podcast, and he had an episode interviewing an entrepreneur every single day, and it became a huge success. All right. So I'm not saying do it every day or do it every 2 months. You've got to find your own rhythm that's in line with your audience, right? Joel and I started off the show talking about how I found my rhythm of basically, I create 3 posts a week. One of them is from a guest blogger, so it's not all me.
Okay.
But that seems to work for my audience. And as I said, sort of as a rule of thumb, I would aim for once a week. Now, in terms of quality versus quantity, it really sort of has to be a combination of things. And again, it depends on your industry. But here is what the suggestion I would provide to you. First of all, don't overthink blogging. Blogging, you don't have to make it a PhD thesis every time out. Sometimes just answering simple questions is certainly sufficient enough. But here's the one thing I have in my mind. Every time I blog or do a podcast episode or write a book, here is what is in my mind. I will never let you down. I will never let my audience down, because I am in such a cherished and honored position where people read my blog and they comment on my blog and they share it.
Yeah.
And that's an honor. And I've earned that position over so many years of creating content. And when you read my blog, It'll be interesting. It'll be relevant. It'll be timely. It might even be a little entertaining. But it will be worth your time. I will never let you down. It will always be worth your time. And I think that should be your mantra when you create content, no matter what the frequency. If it's once a week or twice a week, you can't let your audience down. And that's the thing that drives me in everything that I do.
That's a great answer, Mark. Thanks for that. Let's move on to the next question, which is from Jan Adams. And Jan says, what percentage of written blogs versus, say, video blogs do you recommend? Or does it not matter as long as the content is good enough, whatever the format? So,
well, I think the answer to that question sort of is embedded in some of the things we've talked about already. And I think the biggest thing we all have to struggle with is how do we stand out? So if your consumers of content, your customers, if they're responding to video more than writing, do video. And there's certain sort of, ideas around, are people consuming more video these days? Should I be doing more video? And here's how I look at the world. So there are 4 main ways that people learn and consume content. They can read it, they can hear it, they can see it, or they can do it. As the internet began, the first opportunity to create content was blogging. That was first because it's easy. It's written words. In the early days of the internet, making a video was still a big deal. You needed equipment. You needed editing, right? But then when smartphones came out, that became easier. Video became a lot more accessible. So there was an explosion in video because that was an underserved content need. Today, there's an explosion in podcasting because that's the next thing to come along, right? It's a little bit later to the game. Some people love podcasting, all right? I'm not a big podcasting fan. I don't consume a lot of podcast content. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine said, every day at breakfast, he and his son, they're big sports fans. They want to read, they want to look at all the sports news of their favorite teams of the previous day. He said, I get out my iPad and I read all the news stories about my favorite teams, and my son gets out his iPad and he looks at all the videos of his favorite teams.
Okay.
He said, I could not imagine watching videos of the news of the day before. I need to read it. So blogging is never going to go away. Blogging actually, the number of blogs in the world, blog posts, are actually increasing. So blogging isn't going to go away. But video and podcasting are growing a lot faster because they've been an underserved niche for a long time. And blogging can serve a very special purpose. If you've got a product, for example, that's highly technical, that needs a lot of explanation, that would lend itself to blogging. If you've got something like how to do things, that might be more visual, like video. If it's something that's sort of like fashion oriented or travel, maybe that's photography that you'd put on Instagram or Pinterest. So there's a lot of different factors. And I would just say, think about, number one, what kind of content brings you joy? Because if you're having fun creating this content, your audience will see it. If you don't like doing it and you're getting bored, that will come through.
Yeah. So
number one, what brings you joy? Number two, what does your audience respond to? Number three, you might look at, what are your competitors doing? Is there a way that you can zig while they're zagging to try something different? So again, the answer is depends, but I hope some of those ideas help.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it to me. I mean, you certainly can't be taking on all the angles of blogging, of video, of podcasts. So maybe just you've got to find the channel that works for you and where you find your natural rhythm with it, I suppose, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question is from Claude. And Claude says, in times of uncertainty, we need to adapt constantly in order to keep content relevant. Yep, certainly fair enough. Is evergreen content becoming more irrelevant and outdated?
But boy, that's a really good question, and a very timely question. So when the pandemic hit in America, really beginning in late February, early March, I had a lot of content produced, a lot of content ready to go, and I realized this is irrelevant. This people don't want to hear this. They don't need this right now. So I immediately did a pivot. And one thing that I'm mindful of is, months from now, when this pandemic is behind us, all this content I'm creating that is very pandemic specific won't really matter. It might, some people might be curious someday when they're researching the pandemic and social media what I wrote, but that's going to be about it. So I'm creating months and months of content that's only relevant to right now. So when Claude asks about Evergreen, what that means is this is content that's timeless.
Yeah.
It's tips and tricks and opinion and insights that might last for years. And he's very right in his question about the content that we're creating right now. It's not really going to be evergreen, is it? And the answer to that is he's right. It's not going to be evergreen. But the way I look at it, it doesn't really matter. I need to serve my customers where they are right now.
Yeah.
I need to help them right now. I can't worry about the future. I can't worry about SEO. I can't worry about who's going to read this years from now, or, am I putting my effort into evergreen content? I mean, some of it might end up being evergreen, but probably not. But to me, it just doesn't matter. I need to be relevant right now. I need to serve my customers right now. And that's the only thing that matters.
I mean, it certainly sounds like that in times of change, a lot of this content could be reflected on, because I mean, this is peak change, but I mean, all businesses need to consider and how they can pivot occasionally. So I think there is still evergreen moments in that. Okay, so the next question, we've kind of covered it, but let's just see if there's another angle. It's from Jules, talking about podcasting, so easily listened to on the move. Will it leapfrog the slog of blog as the preferred messaging platform for marketers? Well, I think you've kind of answered this yourself already, Mark, in terms of kind of depends on what your audience like, and depends what you feel in the groove of producing yourself.
Yes, exactly. I think it's really, really important if you're just starting out and trying to determine, well, do I do what do I do? Do I do a blog or a podcast? Do I do video or whatever? Content marketing doesn't start with content. It starts with an analysis of how am I going to add value in this niche? Is it through a different perspective? Is it through a different type of content? Is it through a different channel? Because I'm going to blog and nobody in my industry is blogging, or I'm going to create a podcast because I'll be the first one. And if you don't think it through, if you just start creating content because everybody else is, or you're afraid not to create content because you're afraid that you're falling behind, you're just adding to the noise. You're creating random acts of content. And maybe it'll work, but what I would emphasize is really make a plan. Think it through. Do some analysis first. Make sure it's something that you're passionate about. Make sure it's something that you can stick to every week for months, maybe even years. The whole idea of attracting attention through content, it's a long game. You've got to be patient about it. There's no shortcut. I think one of the most interesting and relevant statistics I ever had on my blog, I did a blog post a few weeks ago that showed the number of subscribers I've had to my blog, right? Now, I've had blog posts go viral. I've had blog posts that have been shared thousands of times, have had thousands of comments. So I've had these huge spikes in traffic on my website and huge spikes in the consumption of my content. And if you look at the number of subscribers over time, it's a straight line up.
Oh, right.
No spikes,
Okay.
no jumps. There's no shortcut. There's going viral doesn't help. You have to do the work day in, day out, consistency, serving your customers and adding value. And it doesn't, going viral isn't going to help you. It's never helped me. Actually, it just causes a headache because then you got to respond to all this stuff and it takes your time away from other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So having this dream of going viral, it's a myth. It's a social media myth. It's, every week, every month, it's just a little better than the last month, a little better than the last month. And that's how it works. And then at some point you get to a critical mass where enough people are paying attention to you that they start buying stuff from you. They're interested in you. You've earned their trust. They look at you as an authority. And I think that's a really important lesson around just consistency and resilience and sticking to it. Very important.
I mean, there is a lot of sticking around and being consistent. I mean, I don't know how many WordPress sites that me and the guys have created over the years, but the amount of times we've added a blog or a news section there, and we've come back and there's just nothing ever gets populated there. So it's getting that discipline to write that content. And I can see, reflecting on what you said earlier, I can see how hard that is for some businesses because they sit there, they start writing content, they're uncomfortable with it. Maybe they got this persona or this idea, but they've not given themselves enough time to push through that pain barrier and to get to it when they're actually found their own voice. And maybe that's the reason why the world is littered with blogs, which just don't get updated a lot.
Well, I think there's a lot of wisdom in your comment there, Joel. And part of it is on the corporate side, companies are not patient. They run on quarterly goals. They want more customers. They want more revenue every single quarter. And building relationships and building connections through content doesn't really work on a quarterly schedule. But there's a lot of advice I have about this in my book, Known, because I knew this was important. And I think one of my most important contributions through this book is an idea of how you measure this. And the way this works is, as I said, it's kind of, slow progress, and then all of a sudden it just starts to get bigger and bigger and more business benefits start to accrue, but you've got to stick it out. And so the measurement system I talk about in Known is paying attention to qualitative measures. So a quantitative measure is like money, or a lead. It's something you can count, right? A qualitative measure might be a story. It's like someone compliments you on your blog, or a customer calls and asks a question because of some podcast episode that you created, or someone invites you to be on their podcast because they like your blog. Those are little signs that show it's working, it's working, it's working. And as long as you see those little signs, which you have to pay attention to it and be aware, hey, wait a minute, that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't creating content. And as long as you see those little benefits, keep going, because that shows it's working. Don't give up. That's the biggest problem. People give up too soon, especially companies, like I said, because they're impatient. But it does work. You just have to be patient and be consistent and be resilient.
It certainly sounds like you've got to put the hard yards in and you've got to sort of persevere through. Right, so let's move on to the next question from Mr. Tony Dowling, who I know you know well.
He's a dear friend.
So Tony asks, can what you've done, Mark, to build your business and your brand be done in today's pay-to-play world, maybe the PPC world of social media? I mean, the world has changed, of course.
Well, not only do I know that it can still happen, it's happening all the time. And I'm very inspired and energized by all the young people that are coming into the scene. in marketing and in other places. And I love the energy. I love the passion. And the rules are the same. They're exactly the same. It's everything that we talked about here, is that if you're coming on the scene, you've got to find a way to be original. You've got to find a way to add value. You've got to find a way to maneuver. And whether you're starting now or you were going to start 10 years ago when it was a lot less crowded in the content scene, the rules are the same. You still have to find that angle. You have to find that way to add unique value. And I see a lot of amazing new content creators that, it's just like, wow, that is so cool. And I love your angle and I love your voice. And, you're creating these cool videos on LinkedIn, or you're creating these new cool things on Instagram that I've never seen before. And so, yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount of energy right now in the whole content space. I think a lot of that, frankly, is driven by these people now that want to be influencers, right? They want to make money from the content that they're creating. And so we're seeing a lot of innovation. We're seeing a lot of sort of technology mashups to tell stories in different ways. So I think, storytelling in terms of, creating emotional connection to your brand is alive and well. It's more important than ever. The world is crowded, but there's still just tons and tons of opportunities. Like I said, you just have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
You have to step back and just do a little analysis to see, okay, where do I fit? And that's how I approach all my clients. I do sort of content analysis studies for my clients all the time, and I start with a 10,000-foot view of saying, where is the world? Where is everybody? And where are we going to fit? Now let's choose what to do, because that will give us the very best chance to succeed.
Yeah, I think your known book does a very good job of helping people understand where they need to focus on their content, because it can be intimidating. Because I mean, you could think, well, the best time for me to have started a blog would have been 20 years ago. Well, of course it would have been, but that's not where we are. So we've got to start today, and what we do today.
And again, I think there's only one you. So even if you're in a niche that's really crowded, I mean, think about what I said. The example with John Lee Dumas, right? How many people out there are creating content about how to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. It's crazy. And John did it anyway, and he became a millionaire. He's highly successful, right? Created a whole business around this podcast. So if you're passionate about something and your niche is full of content, don't be afraid of it, because there's only one you. You've got to do it your way. You've got to, bring a new vitality, a new energy, a new voice. There's always new competitors coming in, and just find a way to be different. Today, being different is more important than being better. Being different and having that unique perspective and that unique voice. I'm not well known because I specialize in Facebook ads or I specialize in, SEO. I'm well known because people believe in me as a person. I write about lots of different things. And by the way, I'm in the most crowded field of all, digital marketing, right? How do you stand out? There's only one way. I just have to be me, right? My point of differentiation is me. I'm not an expert in SEO. I'm not an expert really in anything, but I write about things that I'm interested in, and people follow me because they believe in me as a person.
I mean, it certainly took me a while to get into the process of blogging about WordPress, which is what we specialize in, partially because you get intimidated by all the different content out there. But after a while, you realize, look, I've got a good view on these things. People trust that I give an impartial view of it, and that's my voice. And some people will tune in and resonate with that, and some people need to go elsewhere. But that's fine. I mean, I haven't got to deal with everybody on the planet. I just got to deal with a small niche,
Right.
So the final question we had submitted in was from Helen Reynolds, and Helen asked a great question, actually. It's one that's been on my mind as well. Let me see if I can just pick the bones out. Oh, let me turn. It's actually here. I can turn it on, of course. Yeah. How do we find a good line between giving our audience, our public audience, I suppose, our best brilliant insights on the blog, but also making sure our paid for clients feel they're getting value and access to something more than just we're giving away for free?
Well, I have a very unusual perspective on that. And it might sound even counterintuitive.
Okay.
So in my early days, my main my blog has evolved and changed, and it always will because I'm evolving and changing. But in the early days of blogging, I liked to write about my journey in blogging, what I was learning and what was working and what wasn't working. And I gave away all my best ideas. And because as I was learning, I just shared generously. And then in 2000, I guess it was 2013 or maybe 2014, I actually wrote a book on blogging called Born to Blog. And I think still today, that's the best-selling book on blogging that's out there. It's never stopped selling. It's amazing. It came out in, I think, 2013 or 2014, and it still holds up great today. Now, think about this. If you go on my blog and you look under the categories and you look under blogging, I've probably got, 200 blog posts with my best ideas about blogging. I wrote a book that shared all my best ideas on blogging. And yet, every single month, someone hires me to coach them on their blogging. Now, why would they do that? I've already given away my best ideas. I put them all in a book and all these blog posts I'm giving away for free. And the reason is that my view is that that's how you build authority, by showing your insights, by showing what's special, by giving your ideas away generously. A few years ago, someone came to me and said, "Mark, we have this idea. We're going to create this paid site, and people will have to pay to get all your best ideas." And I said, "No, you don't understand. All my best ideas, I already give them away. It's already on my blog." And they said, no, you don't understand. We mean your best ideas, the ones that you hold back, your best secrets that you talk to your customers about. And I said, you don't understand. I do give away all my best ideas. And that's what builds authority, right? People hire you because of your authority. People hire you not because of you're creating information, like, just regurgitating statistics. People hire you because you have original ideas and insights. That's authority. That's why people will hire you eventually. And so I would encourage you to share your best ideas and set the content free. I'm not a fan of paywalls.
No.
I'm not a fan of gated content because the economic value of content that's not seen and shared is zero. Yeah. So, just unleash the content on the world. Take down every single barrier that keeps that content from moving freely. And people who have adopted that mindset have seen a dramatic change in their businesses because, 95% of the people in the world are going to go away if they need to give you an email address to access a piece of content. Yeah. There's a lot of mistrust in that process. And so my view is, just let her rip, unleash that content and give it the best chance to be seen and shared.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, just because there's a small percentage of people who will take your content and then never do anything else with you, that doesn't negate the whole purpose of sharing the content in the first place, does it? Yeah. Okay then, Mark. Well, look, we've come up on about 45 minutes. I don't want to take up all of your day, so I think we'll just about wrap it up now. Thanks to all those great questions we had from the audience, and thanks very much for your time, Mark. I'll post some links to Known, etc., which is a fantastic reference here. And I'm glad you're back in good health, and I wish you all the best on your new venture with B Squared.
Well, thanks so much, Joel. Thanks for all your good work, and thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for all the great questions today. It's been fun for me.
Have a nice time out on the lake then, Mark, if
All
you
right,
get out there. Okay, bye bye.
take care.